Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a fascinating set of sources, really focusing on this book, Sex Outside the Lines, Authentic Sexuality in a Sexually Dysfunctional Culture.
That's right. Edited by Aaron Kelly.
And our mission really is to unpack the big ideas, the thought-provoking stuff, and maybe challenge some common assumptions we all have about sex and relationships.
Exactly. We're going to deep. And just for context, it's worth noting the team behind it, Oriana Leckert on copy editing, Laura Chirkus and Brittany Martinez proofreading. WordCo Indexing Services did the index. Published by Perseus Distribution.
Got it. Now, the source material doesn't explicitly quote Nietzsche, but reading through it, you definitely get that feeling, don't you? That questioning of established norms.
Oh, absolutely. That questioning spirit is definitely there.
Okay, and just looking at the table of contents gives you a sense of the scope. I mean, it goes from liberating sex, fears around it,
Right.
to critiques of sex ed and psychology, compatibility, marriage, identity. It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. And what's particularly interesting is the author's own journey that's mentioned.
Tell us about that.
Well, they apparently moved away from a sex addiction treatment model. They found it quite, well, sex negative, really.
It's negative, how so?
Focused on social control,
Yeah.
shaming things that aren't strictly normative, like looking at pornography or masturbation.
Okay.
The goal seemed to be confining sex to very specific contexts, like committed relationships, based more on morality than psychology.
Right, not necessarily about what's healthy for the individual,
Precisely. And that led them towards a more sex-positive sexology approach.
which focuses on.
Liberation and sustained health,
Mm.
helping people find what's healthy and fulfilling for them.
Makes sense. So out of that journey comes the book's main argument.
Yeah, and it's a pretty bold one. It suggests that our culture's underlying fear, maybe even distaste, for sexuality.
Yeah.
That's the real root of many modern relationship problems.
Like what specifically?
Well, think about it. High rates of singledom, divorce, infidelity, declining marriage rates, more unmarried couples living together, the growing number of single adults, even more single women choosing adoption. The book links all that back to this cultural discomfort with sex.
Wow, okay. That's a strong claim. Let's dig into that first big theme then. Liberating sex and, well, getting naked, as the chapter puts it.
Right. The argument isn't just about being a bit more liberal within the old frameworks.
Yeah.
No, it's saying we need to be much more inventive. We need new sexual values that actually work for how we live now and, how we might live in the future. Values that are sustainable.
And language plays a big role here, doesn't it?
Huge. The book points out that language is often the first place regulation and shaming happen, especially sexual language.
How so?
That's just policed so much more heavily than almost any other kind of expression. The source mentions Camille Paglia on the damage this does. It's quite striking, that comparison. Maybe even more policed than hate speech, it suggests.
That really highlights the cultural anxiety, yeah. So what would actual sexual freedom look like then?
The book offers some signs. Things like safe and legal sex work.
Okay.
The end of sex addiction as some kind of clinical sickness. And not automatically pathologizing fetishes or different sexual interests.
So the goal is rescuing sex from what?
From oppressive psychological ideas, media portrayals, institutional rules, even the ways we interact with each other sometimes. All things created, the book argues, by people who are fundamentally afraid of sexuality itself.
And this fear shapes how we define acceptable sex.
Absolutely. The common definition excludes so many people. People with disabilities, different body sizes, people dealing with depression, homelessness. It links normal and healthy sex very tightly to specific life paths and ways of being.
And the book mentions McClure and Mallow here.
Yes, pointing out that deviating from this narrow path often leads to getting slapped with clinical labels. Compulsive, dysphoric, fetishistic, addicted.
Basically unhealthy or sick.
Exactly. It's a way of medicalizing difference.
And this idea of normal is tied to privilege.
That's a key insight. The gay marriage debate is used as an example. Just extending marriage rights, while crucial, doesn't actually dismantle the underlying system where some ways of being are still seen as better or more valid than others. It's not just about letting more people in. The whole ideology needs to shift.
So it's about tackling sexual elitism, the idea that my way is the only right way.
Precisely. It's a prejudice. And this connects to how we view neurological and biological diversity, too.
How does that fit in?
Well, often diversity is seen as a flaw, something to be fixed or normalized. The book calls this a kind of modern eugenics.
Strong words.
Yeah. It quotes Wilkerson on how cultural norms privilege an imaginary ideal mind and body, ignoring the reality of diverse human beings.
And this applies to sex and relationships, too.
Directly. Psychology and psychiatry can sometimes use this flawed medical lens to try and correct alternative ways of being, relating, thinking.
Instead of accepting them as valid variations.
Exactly. The argument is that alternative bodies, minds, sexualities, relationship styles, they aren't inherently disabled or abnormal.
And the concepts of disability itself?
The book suggests it actually reinforces the control of medical and psychological industries over anyone who doesn't fit the norm. Terms like neuroqueer or neurotypical are mentioned as ways people are pushing back against being labeled disordered.
Right, challenging the stigma and the fact that diagnoses change over time.
Shows how arbitrary they can be, right?
Yeah.
They often reflect social attitudes more than objective reality.
So stigma leads to pathologizing difference.
Yes, and the irony is, the book argues, that a really vibrant, healthy sexuality often involves the very things, behaviors, fantasies that sex-negative forces want to stamp out.
Like novelty and exploration.
Exactly. We live in a culture obsessed with self-help books, yet we stigmatize anything that pushes boundaries. It's contradictory.
And the book suggests sex workers might be leading the way.
In a sense, yeah. It's a thought-provoking idea. It connects to Foucault's concept of the body being written on by history and culture. Our sexuality is shaped, maybe even colonized, internally.
And labels like porn, stripper, sex addict
are seen as clear signs of this cultural sexphobia. How we frame these things reveals our anxieties.
So a healthier culture would integrate these things.
It would see them as potentially valuable counterbalances to our negativity. Pathologizing them, as Kipnis is quoted saying, just shows our own cultural hang-ups. These things aren't necessarily illnesses. They can be normal parts of sexuality.
What about the internet's role?
Fascinating point. The book calls it the largest catalog of sexuality ever. It really shows the immense diversity out there.
And what people search for isn't always
like standard normal marital sex. Nope. It's often more diverse categories. MILFs, youth, cheating scenarios, trans individuals.
Which suggests that creativity and diversity are actually pretty normal.
Exactly. It's not the exception. It might be closer to the rule. The book compares this to biodiversity, quoting Bagmill, on how sexual versatility helps species adapt.
Nature is diverse, so human sexuality should be too.
Precisely. Abnormality shouldn't mean inferiority. We have a right to be different sexually, relationally, in our identity. Normal isn't the goal for health.
Which brings us back to marriage and monogamy.
Right. The book questions whether they, as currently practiced, are always pro-individual. Equating them solely with love is relatively recent, historically speaking.
And extramarital sex has always existed.
Pretty much. And marriage hasn't always been viewed as the pinnacle of success.
Yeah.
The suggestion is we need to move beyond potentially broken concepts and find healthier ways forward.
Which leads nicely into the next point. Why are we so scared of sex?
The book offers a compelling idea. Maybe fearing relationships and intimacy isn't just a personal failing.
Oh.
Maybe it's a rational response to the unhealthy anti-sex, anti-relational templates our culture pushes.
Because our culture emphasizes independence so much.
Exactly. It ignores that relationships require merging, some codependence even. Growth happens through connection, not just in isolation.
And we're not just one single self, are we?
No. We're different people in different contexts, with shifting needs. Romantic commitments, the book argues, should reflect that fluidity. Changing desires aren't dysfunctional, they're human. But our cultural scripts don't honor that.
And this causes problems in therapy, too.
Oh, definitely. A lot of traditional marriage counseling reveres that two-person monogamy model, almost to the exclusion of everything else.
So if you don't fit, you're pathologized.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Or even if you do fit the hetero-married mold, the models themselves can be rigid. Instead of exploring options like living apart, not marrying, challenging monogamy, therapists sometimes just try to shoehorn couples into the standard model and then kind of blame them when it fails. The book argues these models are outdated. They haven't evolved.
And the high rates of divorce and dissatisfaction suggest they aren't working that well.
Exactly. We need to recognize other healthy ways to relate, not force people into these potentially damaging ideologies. There's a lack of creativity, the author suggests, in the therapeutic world sometimes.
The book identifies specific processes that fuel this fear, starting with colonization.
Yes. The dominant culture sets the normal and imposes it, often portraying alternatives negatively in media and education.
Then there's pathologization.
Right. Raising diversity, making anything non-normative seem medically or legally unacceptable. Psychology contributes with diagnoses like sex addiction or paraphilias, reflecting an anti-sex bias. Practitioners often just assume non-normative means wrong.
And evolutionary theory gets misused.
Often, yeah. Overemphasizing procreation, downplaying sex for pleasure, bonding, social connection, things humans and many animals do all the time, often using contraception even. The idea that sex is only about passing on genes is very limited.
Even the idea of natural gets twisted.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's used to condemn alternatives, but nature itself is incredibly diverse. Same-sex behavior, parenting, intersex variations, multiple genders. It's all out there.
Things like single parenting or sex for fun are common in animals.
Absolutely. The book even mentions animals masturbating, using birth control, modifying objects for sex, interspecies stuff. Nature isn't as rigidly heterosexual or reproductive as some theories suggest.
What about the sex addiction diagnosis specifically?
Well, crucially, the DSM-V, the big diagnostic manual, rejected it.
Why?
It suggests a lack of clear criteria and maybe too much moral baggage. The book argues sexuality is a drive, like hunger, not an addiction. Problems often stem from poor education and misunderstanding healthy sexuality, like accepting your own arousal patterns, or that masturbation and porn are common. Shame forces things underground.
And our expectations shape our reality.
Big time. Sexpectations, the book calls them. Beliefs about what's right or wrong sexually and relationally.
And these come from culture, media.
All of it. But while they influence what we think we want, they have less power over our basic biological and psychological drives. Diagnoses often reflect cultural expectations more than individual health.
So shaming certain styles doesn't make the desires disappear.
Nope. Normalizing monogamy won't magically stop habituation or the desire for novelty. Blaming individuals when the models themselves are flawed is the real problem.
So freedom is
having the sex you want without the guilt, shame, labels, or diagnosis. Behaviors often called sex addiction, like cheating or objectification, might sometimes just be raw sexuality breaking free from constraints.
And the limited evolutionary model is critiqued again.
Yeah, for focusing only on hetero-reproductive sex and judging everything else as a character flaw, what kind of sex we have shouldn't matter to others, and reducing people to their sexuality is simplistic.
Which leads to a really provocative idea that sex education can be dangerous.
Yeah, it's a strong claim. The argument is that current sex ed is often more about control, discipline, and getting bodies to conform.
Than about actual knowledge, health, and confidence.
Exactly. It's built on training, not liberation, and it rarely challenges prejudices about sex, relationships, or identity. Is it freeing people, or is it actually oppressive? That's the question posed.
And it mainly promotes heterosexuality, monogamy, marriage.
Largely, yes. Ignoring variation, diversity, pleasure. It's obsessed with avoidance, abstinence, only safe expressions, and it discourages open talk about the wider spectrum of sexuality.
And the media reinforces this.
Hugely. Ads, magazines, news, they constantly show binary genders, hetero-mononuclear relationships. Where's the polyamory, the trans folks, open marriages, sex for fun, alternative families? These are healthy options that need normalizing.
The focus on strictly female or male sexuality is also critiqued.
Yes, as misleading. Biological differences exist, sure, but struggles are more nuanced than just gender. It creates a false separation.
So we need to be more aware of our social environment. Media consumption.
Crucial. Making conscious choices about the body and sexual norms we take in affects our well-being, especially things like body shame.
And media is a powerful teacher about sex.
Maybe more powerful than parents, the book suggests, in shaping arousal and ideas of appropriateness. And there's such a lack of representation for fluidity, non-normativity, alternative relationships. The author mentions their own show as trying to counter this.
So we need more realistic portrayals.
Definitely. And the book clarifies queer here means non-normative in general, not just gay lesbian. Anyone outside the dominant mold can be queer.
How sex ed is defined shapes identity.
Fundamentally. And current models aren't fostering long-term health, judging by the number of clients therapists see. It needs to liberate, offer options, not just limits. Sex is learned.
The book contrasts this with countries that have more pro-sex education.
Right, places like Germany, Sweden, France, the Netherlands, they tend to have lower teen pregnancy and STD rates.
Yeah.
Real sex ed, it argues, shouldn't be political or theoretical. It should transcend mainstream norms.
So what should healthy sex ed include?
Honesty about shame, discussing diverse behaviors, acknowledging pleasure.
And exploring alternatives, even things labeled paraphilias.
Yes, exploring them as potentially healthy. Lack of knowledge can cause arousal issues. Understanding enhances self-esteem, tolerance. Trying alternative stuff can boost creativity,
Challenging genital tyranny.
meaning the whole body is erogenous, not just the reproductive bits. No part is off limits.
And historically, who educated about the sexual body?
Often those labeled whores, the book notes. True sex ed needs practice, doing, but our culture doesn't support that, expecting talk alone to fix things, a cycle called a form of sexual abuse.
The book talks about a sexual constellation.
Yeah, exploring all the ways arousal happens, different genders, orientations, solo, fluid, asexual, fetishes, objects. It's vast.
And relational configurations.
The many ways to build relationships: poly, open, mono, marriage, swinging, solo poly, monopoly mixes.
And the purpose of sex.
Many valid reasons beyond procreation: pleasure, intimacy, bonding, coping, stress relief, growth.
And anatomy.
The whole body is sexual. Use everything: touch, licking, exploring beyond just genitals and nipples.
Okay, this leads into another critique. The damage psychology can inflict.
It's quite damning. The book finds it disturbing that medical schools are cutting back on sex education.
Why is that damaging?
Because many so-called sexual dysfunctions are actually just miseducation, the author argues.
Like erectile dysfunction.
Often, yeah. It's presented as just a penile problem, but frequently it's about psychological factors, relational issues, unrealistic expectations, not understanding normal ebbs and flows.
Leading to misdiagnosis and maybe harmful treatments.
Exactly. Blaming the penis is unhelpful. And practitioners prescribing enhancers often operate from sexphobic, heterocentric views, shaming difference. The models are anti-sex, pro-hetero marriage monogamy. If you don't fit, you're sick.
And the knowledge production itself is biased.
The book argues yes. Produced by a narrow pool of anti-sex experts making value judgments, perpetuating pathologizing diagnoses, running treatment centers, writing influential but potentially misleading books.
So people believe diagnoses just because treatments exist.
It seems so. Even when things like sex-love addiction or codependence are really contested by many sexologists.
And therapists themselves can be resistant to new ideas.
There can be a desire for normalcy, an unconscious bias that prevents confronting challenging knowledge about heterosexism or homophobia. Therapy often aims for conformity, not liberation and choice.
The book also questions the foundations of psychology.
Yeah, acknowledging problems in grand narratives the therapist as scientist model. Suggesting psychology as theory, not absolute truth, might allow a return to more philosophical open roots.
Otherwise, therapists can act as agents of conformity.
Using misinformation? Yes. Scientific objectivity itself is flawed. Therapists defining health can maintain the desire to make everyone normal. They become moral entrepreneurs enforcing rules.
So therapy should be about social change.
Individual and cultural change, yes. Not just adjusting to the status quo, challenging heteronormativity, media influence, sex phobia, gender training, the whole separate self model. Mental health reflects our environment. Change what you consume. Read, watch, browse.
Liberation-centered therapy allows authentic living.
That's the goal. Which brings us to another core idea: the primacy of sexual compatibility.
More important than emotional or social compatibility.
The book argues, yes, it's the most important for relational success. Too many people buy into love is all you need idea, ignoring sexual desire and congruence, which is actually the best predictor for long-term happiness.
Love isn't enough for monogamy.
Often not long-term. Sexual desire is the glue. Sprecher and Kate are quoted. Sexual satisfaction is a barometer for relationship quality. Waiting for sex until commitment. Recipe for failure, the book says. Sexuality is a crucial tool. Denying its power sends couples to therapy.
And all relationships start with sexuality.
In some form, yes. Donaghue is quoted. Problems in romantic relationships have a sexual dimension. Attachment and sex is what coupling is about. Sex is the magnet, initiating connection. Without it, other priorities might block relationship formation entirely. Abramson calls sex the superglue of humanity.
And it helps reconnect after conflict.
Instantly, potentially. Tisdale's quote about the recuperative powers of sexual pleasure highlights its role in sustainability.
So when other intimacies fade, sex holds things together.
For healthy couples, often yes. Arousal can eclipse minor problems. Sprecher and Kate, again, on the link between sexual and overall relationship satisfaction.
And happy people stay because it's beneficial, not just obligation.
Right. And sexual arousal meets those needs for pleasure, nourishment, mitigating feelings of being trapped.
Research on long-term happy couples supports this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wallerstein and Blakesley found their sex life remains central, even if intensity changes. Weiner Davis says staying sexually connected is the best way to ensure emotional bonds. Sexual happiness fuels relational stability, commitment, longevity.
And online sexual relationships often fill unmet needs.
Exactly, unmet fantasies, underscoring the importance of addressing compatibility offline.
The case studies illustrate this. Kevin, who was taught to wait.
Yes, the author explained that exploring sexuality is getting to know someone deeply. Waiting delays that crucial encounter. Sexuality offers the best access, and compatibility needs exploring before commitment. Don't fear it. It often leads to commitment.
And Ron, who preferred solo activities.
His case highlighted the diversity of arousal constellations. No right way. He needed to reduce shame and talk to his partner. If they're monogamous, her arousal needs matter equally and they need to navigate both. All sexualities are valid.
Christine, whose husband watched trans porn.
Her worry was common but misplaced. His porn choice doesn't define his orientation unless he says so. It's common for hetero men. The point was, you can't compete with someone's complex arousal map.
So psychology has ignored how relationships benefit from ongoing sexualization.
Largely, yes. Attachment theory shows sex powerfully harnesses bonding hormones, activating pleasure, connection, intimacy pathways. These biological gifts are vital for sustainability. Sex is the most competent way to stay connected, the book argues.
And sex is good for self-exploration, too.
Absolutely. Self-esteem, communication, boundaries, intimacy, body image, trauma. Partners can challenge and foster sexual development.
Healthy relationships allow exploring eroticism, preferred risk.
Yes, expanding boundaries for pleasure and growth, being willing to be disturbed, challenged.
So sexual compatibility is about interest and tolerance.
Yes, for each partner's arousal patterns, built from attitudes, desires, frequency. Arousal constellations are internal unconscious and external social. Sexuality is fluid, it can expand.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. The book takes a critical look at marriage, calling it a fantasy.
Right. King was quoted suggesting marriage as it exists often suffocates the individual with watered-down societal values.
It even calls it the worst decision for relationship success.
Potentially, yeah, pointing to divorce rates and unfulfilling long marriages. Relationships need love, commitment, intimacy. The contract doesn't create those. It can even allow partners to stop trying. And divorce is hard, trapping people. Freedom to leave might keep people more engaged.
Marriage carries myths about functionality.
Definitely. Clinical work shows people struggling with misconceptions of healthy relationships. Individuals need to explore the multitude of options beyond just single or monogamous marriage. Those two options are archaic. Institutions should serve us.
So we need to be radical, not just liberal, about marriage.
That's the call. Relationships shape our inner and outer worlds. We have many selves needing validation from multiple connections. Marriage can lead to losing those other selves, collapsing identity to just husband or wife, causing loneliness. Each identity matters.
And the cultural brainwashing about marriage as the ultimate goal is harmful.
It impacts emotional health. Dating isn't just spouse hunting. It's for socialization, sex, recreation. Accepting societal rules robs autonomy.
So healthy adults question institutions, create their own rules.
Yes, throw away the rule books for dating. Base decisions on who you are now with this person. We are constantly changing selves.
Marriage needs updating. It's man-made, malleable.
Exactly. Treat it as such. The current model wrongly demands daily domesticity, exclusivity, forever King Kalma again, on myths based on damaging gender expectations. Gender roles cause conflict, and therapists wrongly collude.
Every relationship is an active system.
Responding to participants in society, humans are flexible. Raising your own bar influences partners. Keep the bar high for yourself. That's the mantra.
Using video monitoring to show individual responsibility.
An interesting technique mentioned. Regardless of partner actions, soulmates aren't needed if you live well. The one ignores the reality of dealing with another person who grows differently. That's just basic development.
Marriage as a cultural safety net. One person at the end.
Shameless point. But psychologically, healthy people evolve. Their wants change. Telling your partner immediately is crucial to avoid resentment, blocked intimacy. Low desire often stems from not deepening intimacy, seeking comfort in the status quo instead of having reality checks.
So redefining boundaries, challenging partners, ending expired contracts. That's courageous.
Yes, for personal evolution and better relationships, disclosure impact is key. Foster closeness, not just relieve guilt. Share if it enhances the relationship, allows understanding, gives choice.
What about infidelity disclosure?
Keep private if it's a one-off, won't bleed into the relationship, and can be used privately to renegotiate boundaries. Share constructively if the other partner can learn too, highlighting unmet needs, perhaps.
Given the monogamy focus, these conversations are hard but necessary.
Absolutely. Monogamy needs communication like any style. Starting with, "This is hard for me to say," can help.
Gender training is also critiqued, socializing men towards productivity over relationships.
Yes, damaging mental relational health, perpetuated by both men and women. Psychological health is sustained engagement, not autonomy. A good test. Ask potential partners about their exes. How did those relationships end?
Shaming co-sleeping is called ethnocentric.
Yes, racist even, based on self-out-of-relationship theories. Bergman, quote, "Many cultures normalize it. Why assume pathology?"
Unethical to impose one group's standards on another.
Contrado, quote, "The U.S. system often defines healthy as traditional male socialization. The developmental model, separation from mother for autonomy Greenspan, isn't universal, pathologizes diversity, creates need for therapy."
Forced separation of mothers and sons is traumatic.
Pollock, quote, "Kids separate at their own rates. Boys don't need pushing faster. Relational maintenance teaches tools. Leaving to grow is often anxiety avoidance."
Critiquing boundary police who say relational us is unhealthy.
Yes. Unlearn myths, codependence, moving too fast, being too needy that ruin authentic drives based on made-up healthy. Health is confidence in your path. Stop shaming early attachment. Blind adherence to norms is assimilation into heteronormativity, racist, sexist.
So, new marriage rules.
Common roles, equal expectations, ability to negotiate based on happiness, balance, family self-needs.
And online dating gaps can be intimacy blockers or safety valves.
Both, potentially. Which brings us to relational sex crimes.
Meaning?
Well, first, acknowledging that nearly everyone has had traumatic sexual experiences, and healing often comes through healthy sex, not by avoiding it. Kovacevic quote about allowing a place for trauma. Diverse creative practices enhance relationships. Fetishes, perversions.
Yes, they can build intimacy, communication, closeness, unless objectively harmful, challenging the hardwired reproduction-only view with brain plasticity. Each sexual interaction rewires us. Sexuality transforms when harnessed for bonds.
Fetishist porn can unlock early networks, enhance arousal.
Donaghue quote on the killer combination and dopamine. Neurological gift of novelty. Perversions don't always involve objectification, but when they do, it can enhance arousal intimacy. Expand definitions beyond stereotypes.
Case study. Dasa, who'd never orgasmed with partners.
Right. Needed clitoral stimulation. Explored fantasies bondage play aroused her.
The book also touches on sexual harassment laws.
Cautiously. Strawson, quote, suggests discomfort with sex has led some pro-censorship feminists to use harassment laws to effectively outlaw expression, even without claims of subordination.
And gender myths about promiscuity, especially for women.
Strongly challenged. Author calls it sexual fascism, limiting behavior based on gender stereotypes. Steals freedom happiness.
Women shouldn't be tied to archaic ideas.
No. All have same capacities for sexual freedom. Calling someone a slut perpetuates limits. Never let gender explain limit behavior. Promiscuity, casual sex can be confidence signs. Healthy people don't use gender in decisions.
Born as safety, until society is truly accepting.
Yes, provides a safe space. Being sexual aroused watching porn is good. Don't link sexual interest to self-worth. Paglia, quote, "Those who hate porn hate what they don't understand about their own bodies."
Healthy sex doesn't need another person. Masturbation.
Reinforces individual sexuality, yes. And porn can save lives.
Controversial, but the book cites studies. Diamond quotes linking minimal porn exposure in violent offenders, often from repressive backgrounds. As porn use increases, some studies show crime rates decrease. No correlation found between porn use and victimization in others. Kimmel and Linders, D'Amato. Goodbard et al. Found no significant difference in exposure between offenders and non-offenders. Later research suggests catharsis. Walker.
Downsides of porn.
Doesn't show variability of function. False representations, easy arousal, lasting erections. Media promotes unrealistic ideals, need critical education. Socially accepted porn would allow more diversity. Rare representation of alternative bodies' identities as sexual.
Yes, making types invisible is oppression. Refer clients to alternative porn builds esteem. Porn can increase sexual identification. Non-normative porn shows being out of line can be smoking hot, Erickson. Individuals need erotic imagery reflecting themselves.
So benefits outweigh negatives if viewed critically.
Strawson, quote, "Porn is essential for those without sexual contact. Vital against normativity regulation. Helps unlearn dominant norms. Arousal built from consumed images. Porn works with plasticity. Needs more diversity, not restrictions.
What about children's sexuality?
Born with a functioning sexual response system. Shaping begins day one, Ehrenberg and Ehrenberg. Childhood, as a concept, can deny this until arbitrary adulthood. Child's body, like diverse disabled bodies, is policed, creating fear.
Adult involvement, often about their own anxiety.
Yes, problematic behavior is lack of impulse control, boundaries, empathy, not diverse interests. Kids need sexual confidence.
Avoid premature labels for girls' sexual talk play.
Slutty, over-sexualized, lesbian, lamb, quote. This is what children do. Exploration and expression are normal.
Adult dysfunction stem from learned shame.
Often from childhood. Yates, quote, clinics treat dysfunctions, but only parents can prevent them. Parents need comfort with a non-sexuality, balanced perspective, respect for eroticism, encourage independence, model intimacy.
Sexual discovery should be celebrated.
As movement into deeper intimacy pleasure, praising virginity as sexuality damages psyche, polices boundaries with arbitrary definitions of real sex. Losing virginity implies degradation. Don't link worth solely to body sexuality.
Case study, rich, happy with masturbation, partner upset.
Solo sex is fun controlled separate. Couple issues need teamwork. Partner can share impact but can't control it. Daily masturbation porn are healthy. Rich isn't an addict. Can't control solo aspects even in monogamy. Partner wasn't convinced. Rich is past. Addiction is about consequences control, not quantity. Sex is a drive, not addictive. Like food sleep, though regulation can be a struggle. Ask partner about her anxiety, fear of Rich's past-present. Different drive template histories needed work.
Never punish partners for prior sex lives.
Never. Development includes exploration. Never apologize for history. Don't share unless partner is mature. Those wrongly diagnosed sex addicts are told to be ashamed.
Diagnoses transform behaviors into types of people.
Rose, quote, modern medicine restores lost normativity, not transforms capacities. Exemplifies what's wrong, restoring outdated expert norms.
Clinical mantra. Normal is not the goal.
Yes, no measure exists. Post-biology, post-nature epoch needs new visions. Sexual relational life for sexologists, sociologists, philosophers.
Which leads to the idea that sexual dysfunctions are a myth.
Essentially, yes. They're unrealistic expectations. Erectile dysfunction isn't just penile for most. Problem is in their heads, Donaghue. No single right way for sexuality. Diversity is life. Medical field forces good-bad boxes, ignores relational psychological factors.
Treatments diagnoses regulate sexuality while claiming to affirm it.
Brum and Hurley, quote, many disorders are value differences. DSM reinforces this with physical criteria for intercourse problems. Ogden.
Sexual medical pharmacomplex creates needs.
Frames erectile issues as solely biological.
Self-help industry often untrained. Sex-phobic.
Yes. Too many in 12-step complain of sexual anorexia, shaming of preferences, sex work, non-relational sex, porn masturbation.
Low desire is an expected stage, not a disorder.
Natural tension. Bonding versus freedom. Lack of desire with long-term partner isn't a disorder, it's victim-blaming systemic habituation issue. New skills reinforce powerlessness over lack of novelty in monogamy. Typical consequence. Current treatments, shame partners, reinforce flawed idea of constant sex. Fields fear challenging marriage monogamy, prescribe flimsy exercises that fail, shame individuals. Long-term desire at same rate for same partner is near impossible, need other options.
Which brings us to maybe the most radical idea. No identity, gender, or sexual orientation.
Striving for that, yes, because coherent identity is impossible, unstable, multiple, fluid, contradictory. Labels limit flexibility needed for sexual health, relational sustainability. Language constructs psychology self.
Labels create binaries, exclusion, privilege, hierarchy.
Yes, female requires male false dichotomy, non-existent difference in types of individuals.
Universal sex temperaments are just stereotypes.
Egan, quote, female sexuality as quiescent fragile, male as active natural. Both wrong. Lamb, quote. Girls, like boys, are deeply sexual and deeply aggressive. Erroneous gender diagnoses lead to slut-shaming psychic violence.
Labels create catchetism.
Sexism, heterosexism, monosexism, racism, ableism, sizeism, ageism, cissexism, singleism, normalism. Serrano, quote.
These ideas have incapacitated women's sexualities.
Passive, anxious, wait for sex, be receptive, creates problems, low self-esteem.
Gender permanence is problematic. Surgery doesn't create a new self.
Always juxtaposed with the former. Only trans people held accountable to birth body. Other body changes, cosmetic surgery, weight, accepted. Genital change requires approval obstacles. No age identity disorder, but gender is special case. Changing other attributes isn't deviant.
Gender kills, inherently damaging.
Male gender, draft, disposable body, circumcision, illegal for females, psychology, faux diagnoses, women and children first, disposable. Female gender, give up career, body policing, hairless, youthful, thin, media, marriage, kids as only goals, no valid basis socially constructed.
Seeking biological basis for inequalities repeats history.
Eugenics, social Darwinism, Nazism, IQ testing, Sturgeon quote. Views on nature gender reflect culture more than biology.
Etiquette based on genitals is disempowerment.
Perpetuates sexism separation. Ingram quote. All standards negotiable, gender rules should be challenged, all sexism stems from gender.
Masculinity harms both genders.
Prevents desired identities, lifestyles, stop dividing sexes into disposable, protected, feral, equal value, avoid Buffett-style gender roles.
The science of sex, psychology pathologizes fluidity, multiplicity.
Watkins and Schulman quote, mental health expects consistency. Internal organ cells fat aren't gendered. We never graduate from working on identity. Turkle quote.
Western infant genitalia standards lead to correction.
Mutilation to normal, Preve's quote on micropenis clitoral hypertrophy ignoring chromosomes gonads. Forced sex gender based on normal, primitive view of intercourse as only sex.
As much difference within genders as between them.
Yes. Identity politics reinforces separation. Female-male are compromises.
Nature is queer, diverse, no single answer.
Yes. Psychology, sexology look to social constructions of nature for natural healthy, based on myth fantasy. Normative expectations rule out non-hetero.
Darwin's theories used obsessively for sexist anti-alternative views.
Based on hetero-reproductive model. Ignores non-hetero, asexual, non-reproductive desire, non-dyadic partnership more than two genders. Makes reproduction sole aim, excluding auto-non-procreative same-sex acts to equate heterosexuality with nature. Lancaster quote.
Animal world shows diversity again.
Pleasure-only sex, masturbation, birth control, object insertion, interspecies sex, herd, bag mill.
Some male animals monogamous, females polyamorous.
Lifelong monogamy is rare. Rough garden course.
Same-sex couples, bisexuality, parenting and animals.
Courtship, affections, sex, pair bonding, parenting. Bag mill quote. Erotic fluidity over time.
Arousal is a constellation. Broader than orientation.
Yes. Orientation focuses on gender of object, Schwartz, but sexuality is broader, often no genitals. Identity, sexuality not fixed, chosen daily, momentarily in context. Culture forces oppressive identification.
Need inclusive taxonomy. Anything can be sexualized.
Major categories. 1, target, human object, non-asexual. 2, direction, self-other no. 3, gender interest. Opposite ambiguous same interests can change.
Psychology, feelings easily eroticized.
Yeah.
Scenarios, environment.
Yes. Consensual spree injury is healthy.
Danger taboo common. Creates tension, read as arousal.
Discussion, fantasy, masturbation, erotica. Full spectrum builds strong erotic foundation.
Pride is problematic. Liberation by amputation. LGBT politics flatten difference.
Garland Thompson, quote, excludes those who don't assimilate. Equality can't use oppressive tools. New homonormativity sustains hetero assumptions, Duggan. Conventional gay rights rely on assimilation. Master's tools, Lord. Anti-difference ideology says non-hetero okay because normal, Stafford. Difference only celebrated if matching status quo is assimilation.
Queer families expected to show how normal they are.
Evans, quote, prejudice turns inward on non-normative members, whitewashing difference.
Bringing in only respectable excludes others.
Jennings, quote, identity regulates body psyche, unethical anti-self. Liberatory categories can become oppressive, Hodges. Gender behaviors from expectations, not biology. Identity leads to stereotypes. True intimacy isn't identification, Butler.
Gender as trauma. Confusion as healthy development.
Solidity as the disorder. Health and gender refusal. Intersects with personality rigidity, Fox et al. Personality as social problem impeding reflection. Internal life as historical production via language, Gateman. Language creates self's identities. Be sensitive to labels.
Brains internalize lessons on sex performance.
TV, magazines, family. Gender performance aren't natural.
Work is evolving out of identity.
Yeah.
Undoing fixed gender sexuality.
Yes. Subjectivity as fluid relational contextual space for self-reconstruction.
4, self-representation.
1, gendered, adheres. 2, transgendered, moves between outside. 3, non-conforming, none neither. 4, queer, creates fluid original self.
Fundamentally relational beings.
Kingma quote, personalities form through relationships.
Beneath socialization isn't one true self.
Multiple shifting representations, Rivera. Beneath gender isn't essential gender, but ambiguous, conflicted relation to sex, Diamond. Explore nomadic subjectivity due to accelerating changes, Bridoki. Categories inadequate as people experiment with bodies, Bordeaux.
Case study. Say I'm unsure about gender identity.
Issue is pressure to choose Blieu. Explore gender as social category, many options, or none. Expectations create problems.
Okay, let's look ahead. The future of sex and relationships. Sexual dark ages.
Meaning death of traditional concepts, marriage, paternal birth-determined family, identity-bound sex, death of tradition-defined future, dissolution of everything solid and recognizable, Edelman. Pop culture already imagines alternatives, Halberstam. Pleasure, intimacy, community freed from biosocial confines. New norms create crisis for tradition.
Using 21st century ideas on outdated templates won't work.
Need updating with tech, apps, tech changes experience, Lynn quote on sexualizing tech, internet upgrading sex lives.
Online interactions versus face-to-face.
Online can stay fantasy projections. Face-to-face forces recognition of the other.
Sex in the now. Coercive belief in the future leaves present behind.
Edelman quote, process ignored for partnership family goals. Arousing sex-fun relationships need queering. Ignore future orientation consistency belief. Or changing systems. Longevity unpredictable. Decisions must be present-oriented. Future focus is fantasy.
Tech allows reproduction without sex, frees women.
Potential liberation. Globalization of sex relating via apps expands choices beyond geography. Ushers in new configurations. Dating no longer linear. Long-term commitment less expected. Relationships don't need to be going somewhere. Unbound intimacy allows flexibility, temporariness for current autonomy desire. Bernstein.
Undervaluing non-normative configurations.
Not all need face-to-face real-time. Forms should meet needs, not force tradition.
Examples of new liberated styles.
Online only, serial marriage, cross-generational, plural, asexual friendship, solo, open, queer, no structure rules fluid.
Male mothers, female fathers, co-parenting.
Fulfill needs. Parenting is care, not gender rules. Fathering against fatherhood, mothering against motherhood, challenge norms.
New rules for parenting.
Normalize adolescent sexuality, stay connected, doesn't need separation, don't see sex as problem, stop gendered battle. Females also desire hookups.
Singledom is acceptable endpoint. Brilliance of marginal communities ignoring norms.
Assimilation limits choices. Directing life to pre-chosen vision creates hierarchic toxic shame.
Traditional developmental trajectory internalized by marginal groups.
Straight culture co-opted growing up, queerer can grow sideways.
Burden of age and social assumptions.
Society's psychology obsessed with staged expectations. Subcultural evolution isn't problematic.
Career shows lives chosen by other norms. Being single career-centered isn't regressive.
Regressive is mimicry. Non-normative behavior, often confidence health. Healthy people choose own trajectories.
Future deconstructs relational expectations. High singledom rates.
Being without romantic coupling is legitimate choice. Trajectory circular, not line to coupling endpoint. New standards, nice person. Stability Mukhopadhyay, not where is this going?
Relationships, all kinds, create happiest people, not just marriage coupling.
Yes. Idea happiness needs partner breeds misery anti-single bias. Married households minority, most Americans single, spend more life single, Tapalo, yet look down upon.
Need to allow alternative frameworks, meanings, configurations, trajectories.
Therapist, quote, relationships breaking convention are Roman candles lighting the way. King Guma and Grand Transformation, love as a wrecking ball.
New rules for dating.
5. Date with solid friend group. Don't misuse partner as sole outlet. Limited relationships, limit development. Friendship skills needed. 6. Date up. Healthier people speaking to your best. Most choose anxious partners allowing bad behavior. 7. Date as yourself. Embody all selves from date 1. So, wrapping up this deep dive. Wow, we've definitely unpacked a lot. Challenging norms around sex, relationships, identity.
Absolutely. Looking at how fear, expectations, old models shape things.
Highlighting sexual compatibility, the limits of traditional marriage.
The fluidity of identity, the need for liberation.
And thinking about where things might be heading, it's a lot to take in.
It really is. Which leads us to that final thought for everyone listening.
Right. Maybe ask yourself, which societal norms about sex and relationships have you just accepted without much thought?
And what possibilities might open up if you challenge those assumptions? If you embrace a broader view of connection and desire?
It definitely sparks more questions. Hopefully, this dive encourages everyone to keep exploring these themes in their own way.